everyone. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes as we wait for people to kind of get connected with us. Great. So, hey everyone, as people are joining, I am Hannah Beasley and I'm a senior social entrepreneur at AARP Foundation and kind of lead our student loan work. And I am thrilled to be here with Anna Anderson, who is from the National Consumer Law Center and an absolute expert in all things student loans. So I will pass it over to her and she'll be kind of leading us through our conversation today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here and joining us today. As Hannah mentioned, my name is Anna Anderson, and I'm a staff attorney at the National Consumer Law Center, NCLC, where I work on student loan issues. And it is just me today, so I'm going to be walking you through loan forgiveness and cancellation programs. This is the third webinar in our series on aging with student loan debt. And this is something that I hope will provide everyone with a little bit of base knowledge on the different types of programs that you may be eligible for. Many borrowers that we talk to don't realize that these programs exist and actually have some misunderstandings about some of these programs. So we want to make sure that everyone who's watching today knows of the various ways that you may be able to get your student loan debt canceled, because a lot of borrowers are not just taking advantage of this. And we want to make sure that if you are eligible, you do know how to apply, you do know how to get that relief, because obviously the biggest way to get out of student loan debt would be to cancel it and wipe it out for good. So we're going to walk through some of that today and go over the ins and outs of those programs. We will also have time at the end for questions. Because it is just me today, if I'm not able to answer all of your questions live, I will follow up with Hannah to provide some written responses to questions to be sent out with the materials from today's program as well. So thank you for joining us. This is the third part of our series, and we will have two more webinars coming up in August and October to complete the series. So be sure to stay tuned for those as well. All right, so jumping right in, I do want to provide some quick updates on what's happening in the student loan world. We've said in the past couple of webinars that we've presented, there have been a number of changes in the student loan system that have been happening as we are going through and presenting everything to you. So you may be hearing about things that are occurring in the news. There's also proposed changes happening in Congress right now. And this is all in flux. So everything we tell you today is current as of today. When we meet again in August, we may have more updates for you, but we just want to make sure that you understand currently what is happening. So big thing we want to flag, since the last time that we checked in, debt collection on student loan debt for federal student loans has resumed. So this is news as of May. The Department of Education did state that they would begin collecting on defaulted federal student loan debt beginning in May, and that has happened. We've heard from borrowers who have already had their tax refunds seized. So again, if you don't know if your student loans are in default, that is something that you really want to check out on studentaid.gov and check out on all of your accounts, because if you default and you're in default on your federal student loan debt, you could potentially face the loss of your tax refunds, garnishment of your wages, and even loss of your federal benefits, including Social Security benefits. SSI and VA benefits are protected, but Social Security retirement benefits and Social Security disability benefits are something that the government can take to collect on defaulted federal student loan debt. And there is no statute of limitations for the government to collect on defaulted federal student loan debt. So if you haven't paid your student loans in a number of years, you could be facing these serious collection consequences. And we want to make sure people are aware of that, because that has been paused for a really long time due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but that is now restarting, and we want to make sure folks are aware of that and understand their rights and how to get out of default if they can. So again, right now, what we've heard from the Department of Education is that they have started seizing tax refunds to collect on defaulted federal student loans. But the department did announce that they were going to pause temporarily collection of Social Security benefits. So some folks may have already gotten a notice that they were going to have their Social Security benefits offset. The government has not said how long that pause will be in place. It may only be a month, it may only be a few months. We are not sure. We just don't know how long this pause will last. So please keep an eye out for any news you may hear about this, because once that gets started again, you could lose up to 15% of your benefits each month. Wage garnishments. We've also heard from the government that wage garnishments will begin sometime later this summer. They haven't given us an exact date of when that is going to happen, but if you are working and you are getting a paycheck and you have defaulted federal student loans, you may see that your wages will be garnished at some point later on this summer. So with that, we want to make sure that folks understand that if you want to avoid these collection consequences, you need to take steps now to get your loans out of default. So right now, there are only two ways to get your loans out of default: either consolidating your loans to get out of default or completing a loan rehabilitation. Now, this is something that can be a bit complicated, but there is a lot of really good information about how to take these steps and how to get out of default now. We have that information on our website, studentloanborrowerassistance.org, but also the government has that information on studentaid.gov. And we've included the link here if you want steps to find out how to get your loans out of default so that you can avoid these collection consequences. This website also has information about how to determine whether or not your loans are in default in the first place. That is something that we've gone over in previous webinars, so I will say if you need more information on that, definitely refer back to our previous webinars that we've given, as this is really critical information for borrowers to know right now. So that is the big update. Obviously, I do want to flag that there's stuff happening in Congress right now related to the reconciliation bill, the budget bill that is getting passed, that includes some provisions to change the student loan program. There's a lot of news back and forth about what actually is going to happen. Nothing has been finalized. We will update everyone at our next webinar in August if we have updates on what, if anything, has been finalized related to student loans and student loan repayment on that webinar. So please stay tuned for that. But again, we will flag things as we are going through the presentation today, just to be aware of when you need to potentially watch out for changes that could be coming related to specific programs. So with that, I want to get into the meat and potatoes of our presentation today: loan cancellation and forgiveness programs. And we're going to be talking primarily about these programs as they relate to federal student loans. I will briefly discuss private student loan options at the end, but everything we're talking about today, for the majority of this, it's going to be federal student loans. So when you're thinking about these programs, you really need to understand if you have federal student loans, private student loans, or a combination of the two. The majority of people who have student loan debt have federal student loans. And as we've gone over in previous webinars, a lot of people incorrectly assume that some of their loans are private loans when they are, in fact, federal student loans. So definitely refer back to our previous webinars on this topic if you want to know the difference between federal loans and private loans and how to determine what your loan situation is. And what I will say today, for these loan cancellation programs we're going over, this is all for federal student loan debt. So here's some common questions that we get about student loan forgiveness. So the first big one is, didn't the Supreme Court say that student loan forgiveness was illegal? We're going to go over that. We're going to go over all of these questions today. And if you have additional questions that are not covered here, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A section of the webinar. We will have time at the end to go over these live, hopefully. Some other questions that we get are, am I eligible to have my loans canceled after I retire or reach a certain age? Can I get my loans canceled if I worked in a public service job before I retired? Is student loan debt forgiven by the government taxable? That is a big question we're getting right now. And don't I have to be on disability benefits to get a total and permanent disability discharge? We're going to spend a lot of time today going over the total and permanent disability discharge program, because a lot of people have misconceptions about who qualifies and who's eligible for that. And it is a big benefit for people as they are aging and can no longer work. It is something that more borrowers are probably eligible for than they are aware. Finally, with relating to private student loans, a lot of people ask us, if their private loans were written off, doesn't that mean that they were forgiven? So we're going to go over a little bit about how charge-offs and write-offs work with the private student loan programs, and give you a little bit of background if you are dealing with private loans on what to do and whether or not any of that would be potentially forgivable. Okay, so I'm going to start with a couple of questions just to get the gears going a bit. So true or false? The Supreme Court ruled that student loan debt cancellation is illegal. And the answer to this one is false. So while the Supreme Court did strike down the Biden administration's specific plan to provide broad-based relief to student loan borrowers, up to $10,000 for most student loan borrowers, the court didn't actually rule that all student loan debt relief was illegal. So the court very specifically struck down that one particular program. However, borrowers can still get relief through other programs that have been enacted by Congress. So those programs still exist. They're still valid. We are still hearing from borrowers who are getting their loans canceled under those programs on a daily basis. So those are still in place and still legal, and the Supreme Court did not strike those down. And we're going to go over all of those today. So next, true or false? You can have your student loans canceled once you reach a certain age or you retire. So this is a big question that we get a lot from borrowers who are aging, who are looking to retire, who maybe have been retired for a really long time and are like, I'm 85 years old. Why do I still have to pay my student loan debt? Can't I have them forgiven? So unfortunately, this is false. There's no program to forgive your student loans based on age or retirement status. However, many borrowers who are retired or who are older may qualify for many different types of forgiveness programs that are out there, including the Total and Permanent Disability Discharge Program or even the Income-Driven Repayment Cancellation Program. So we're going to go over all of these today. So even though there is no age or retirement specific forgiveness program out there, there are other programs that you may still be able to benefit from if you are in one of those situations. So here are some of the things that we're going to cover today. So we're going to go over what cancellation, forgiveness, and relief programs exist for federal student loans, who's eligible for these programs, how to apply for those programs, and a deep dive on the Total and Permanent Disability Discharge Program itself. We're also going to briefly touch upon how to watch out for scams and what to do with private student loan debt, but that's going to be a very small portion of the session today. So let's dive into the cancellation, forgiveness, and discharge programs at the federal student loan level. So I have a list here on this slide that shows the various student loan discharge and forgiveness programs that are available as part of the federal student loan program. So the Total and Permanent Disability Discharge Program, which is also called TPD for short, that is something that we are going to talk about today. We've already talked about a lot. Public Service Loan Forgiveness, or PSLF. This is a program that we get asked about on a daily basis, and people have a lot of questions about because it does provide really great relief for borrowers who have worked in public service. The Income-Driven Repayment, or IDR, loan cancellation program. We're going to go over that a bit today too. And then some other less common programs that are going to apply to borrowers in very unique situations. So these include the Borrower Defense to Repayment Program, false certification and identity theft discharges, closed school discharges, and death discharges. So this is a list of the primary programs that exist. There are a few other programs that are out there, but they are very rare and only apply to a few specific borrowers. You can find information on all the discharge and cancellation programs on the studentaid.gov website, but also on studentloanborrowerassistance.org. So we're going to spend the most of time today covering how to apply for the Total and Permanent Disability Discharge Program. And that is because this is one of the easiest ways to get relief from student loan debt for older borrowers in retirement. It's something that is underutilized by a lot of people today. We want to make sure that you know the ins and outs of that program, especially if you've got medical appointments coming up, you're going to be meeting with your doctor. This is something that you might want to talk to your doctor about because it might be something you could benefit from and could provide you with complete relief from your federal student loans. But before we get into that, let's go over the other programs first, just so you know the ins and outs of all of them, how to apply, and what is going on with them right now. So we're going to talk a little bit first about President Biden's student loan relief. And that's because I think we get a lot of questions about this program. There's a lot of myths going around online about this program, what the status of it is. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of confusion that I think really needs to be cleared up. So, as I stated earlier, the Supreme Court did strike down President Biden's first attempt to provide broad-based debt relief to student loan borrowers. In this case, borrowers were going to be eligible if they applied for $10,000 of student loan forgiveness, and in some cases, up to $20,000 of student loan forgiveness. The Supreme Court ruled that that was not legal, that the Biden administration did not have authority to provide that, and that was struck down. And the Biden administration at the time announced that they were going to be seeking an alternative path or a plan B to provide some type of student loan forgiveness to all student loan borrowers. But unfortunately, that also was abandoned and that is no longer in existence. And so there is no alternative path that is currently being proposed by the current administration or by Congress to provide broad-based student loan debt relief to borrowers at the federal level. So just want to make people aware of that there is no backup plan to provide any type of relief outside of the existing and current federal student loan discharge and forgiveness programs. Now, there were some other temporary programs that the Biden administration did put in place that provided a number of borrowers with debt relief, including the PSLF waiver and the one-time IDR payment account adjustment. Now, this helped millions of borrowers cancel their loans or get closer to student loan cancellation. And that was not overturned. That is still something that borrowers who were able to take advantage of have benefited from, and that is something that is still valid today. Additionally, the Biden administration also provided cancellation for borrowers who attended certain predatory schools. So those programs have all now ended, and there's no new plan again to provide student loan debt cancellation beyond the additional programs we're talking about today. But we just wanted to make people aware that some of those programs that were enacted on a temporary basis due to the pandemic were still upheld. It was only the one-time broad-based debt relief plan that the Supreme Court struck down. So we're going to go over the ins and outs of the specific federal student loan discharge and forgiveness programs now, what the requirements are, and how you can apply for them. The first one we're going to talk about is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, PSLF. Now, if you worked in a public service job, and you currently work in a public service job, such as teaching, you work for a nonprofit, you are in the military, or you work for a government, then you may be eligible for credit under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And after you meet all of the requirements, you can apply to have your loans forgiven. So to qualify for PSLF, you must have direct loans. This is a specific type of federal student loan that's out there. You must work full-time in a qualifying public service job. You must be in a qualifying repayment plan, and you must make the equivalent of 120 qualifying monthly payments or 10 years of payments in this service while meeting all these other requirements in order to qualify. So that adds up to about 10 years of qualifying payments on qualifying loans while working full-time in a qualifying job. It doesn't have to be consecutive. It is something that if you work for a few years in the public sector, then take a private job, but later go back to the public sector, you may be able to continue to earn credit towards the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And after you reach that 120 marker of qualifying payments, you can apply to have your loans forgiven. Now, student loan debt forgiven through the PSLF program is not considered taxable income for purposes of federal taxes. How that might apply for state taxes really depends on the state you're in. If you have specific tax questions, we would definitely tell you to talk to a tax advisor. But what we can tell you is that it's not considered taxable for federal purposes. So you earn credit for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program by submitting what's called an employment certification form. This is also known as ECF for short. So you can submit your ECFs at any time. You can even retroactively submit these forms for past qualifying time and repayment. Again, payments don't have to be consecutive, and you can bank time at different jobs. So we know a lot of people who have changed jobs or have left their job temporarily while they were recovering from an illness or taking care of children or other family members and have gone back later to work in a public service job. You can bank time at different periods to count towards public service loan forgiveness. So the easiest way to complete this form and to get credit is to actually use the Department of Education's PSLF help tool. It's really easy to fill out. It's an online form. You can complete it and send it to your employer to sign, because your employer does have to certify that you have met their requirements, that you are working, and you are working as required under the guidelines. So ECFs that are submitted online, so if you use the PSLF help tool, they're processed much faster than forms that are faxed or mailed in. I will say we have a number of people who have had issues when they've mailed forms in, printed forms off, that they've gotten lost by the loan servicers, gotten lost by the Department of Education. So if you have access to studentaid.gov, you can get online, you can log in. I would absolutely recommend using the PSLF help tool in almost every situation, because you can get a pretty quick response in terms of how much credit you already have or you will have been earning towards PSLF. So one big flag, and this is a question we get all the time, is you have to be working in a qualifying public service job when you apply for forgiveness. So this means you can't have your loans canceled under PSLF if you apply while you are retired. So this is a big barrier for a lot of people who did not know that this program existed, who weren't taking the steps to earn credit towards PSLF while they were working in a qualifying job, or just didn't think about this particular requirement when they left their job, either because they went into the private sector or because they retired. Unfortunately, this is a big requirement of the program, and you have to be employed at your public service job at the time you submit your final application, your final ECF, to certify that you met the 120 months. So that's a big barrier. Unfortunately, that's where the program is right now. If there are any updates or changes made in the PSLF program down the line, we will let folks know, but you can't apply once you've already retired. If you are in sort of semi-retirement and you meet the qualifying, work requirements, so you're working full-time, 30 hours or more at a public service job, you may still be able to apply for this program. But again, if you're submitting these retroactively, just know that you still have to be in some type of public service job while you are applying. So next, we're going to go over income-driven repayment cancellation. This is another big way that a lot of borrowers who've been in repayment for a long time have been able to get their loans canceled. So you have to be enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan, such as currently Pay, ICR, or IBR. The SAVE plan that is out there is currently subject to some litigation, so there's challenges happening in court that looking likely that the SAVE plan is not going to count towards IDR repayment cancellation. Again, there are a lot of changes coming to the IDR program right now that are being proposed in Congress, so we actually don't know if the IDR cancellation program is going to exist going forward, what it's going to look like. All I can tell you is right now, what we know is that if you have been enrolled in an IDR plan and you've been making your payments in that plan for 20 to 25 years, depending on the plan, depending on the type of loans you have, then you should be automatically eligible for cancellation once you reach that required number of payments. However, because of the challenges, because of what Congress is proposing, all of this may be changing. We can't guarantee what that's going to look like in the future. And currently, the Department of Education has said that only borrowers who are signed up for the income-based repayment plan, the IBR plan, are currently going to receive automatic cancellation once they reach the required number of payments. So for folks who are in other plans, such as Pay or ICR or SAVE, if you've met what you believe are the required number of payments already, you are not going to receive automatic cancellation at this point. And again, We don't know what the future will hold, what this will look like in the months or years to come. We will definitely update you if we get news on what's happening in Congress and what is being finalized there at our next webinar. So student loan debt forgiven through the IDR program is not currently considered taxable income for the purposes of federal taxes. Again, state taxes are different. You need to check with a tax advisor if you have questions about state taxes. But the big flag here is that tax relief for this program is set to expire at the end of this year, at the end of 2025. So future forgiven debts may be considered taxable income under this program. So if beyond 2025, if Congress doesn't make any additional changes to extend this tax relief, then future debt forgiven under this program may be considered taxable income. Now, that doesn't always mean that you have to pay the federal government taxes on the full amount that's forgiven. Some people may qualify to have some of that waived, but again, you have to talk to a tax advisor if this is something that you are concerned about and looking forward to in the future. So again, as I flagged, Congress is taking action right now to potentially change the IDR program. So be sure to attend our program in August or watch the program in August if you want to hear more updates on what's happening there. So death discharge. A lot of people who talk to us are really concerned about what's going to happen to their student loan debts after they pass away. They may be in the time of their life where they're thinking about estate planning, and they want to make sure that they don't leave these debts for their families to have to take care of. So one thing I will just let folks know is that after a borrower dies, with federal student loans, they will be discharged. The process for discharging the debt after a borrower has died is fairly straightforward. Typically, the debt is discharged after a family member or other representative for the estate provides the loan servicer with proof of the borrower or student's death in the event that you're a parent borrower and your child unfortunately has passed away before you. If you can provide a death certificate in that situation or other proof, in most cases, the debt will be discharged automatically and fairly quickly, fairly easily. So the one benefit here is that this is not something that folks will have to be worried about passing on to their decedents, and it's not something that you have to necessarily take into consideration for estate planning purposes. However, you may just want to let your family members know if you have student loan debt, just these couple of basic steps that they may have to take if they're going to be in charge with handling your estate after you pass away. And there's information on how to go about doing that on studentaid.gov. Just like with all these other programs, studentaid.gov actually breaks down all of the steps, has all the applications if you need to apply for a program, or if you need a specific tool to submit forms like the PSLF help tool. All of that is going to be available on studentaid.gov, which is the federal government's website for managing student loans. So now we're going to get into some of the more unique programs that don't apply to all borrowers and probably will not apply to the majority of folks, but they're still programs that you should be aware of. So first up is the closed school discharge. So if you were unable to complete your program because your school closed while you were enrolled or you withdrew shortly before the school closed, then you may actually be eligible to have your student loan debt forgiven and discharged through the closed school discharge program. Now, student loan debt forgiven through the closed school discharge program is not considered federally taxable income, but again, we advise you if you have questions about taxes to contact a tax advisor. There is an application process for people who are eligible for closed school discharges. The government was providing some automatic cancellation and may go back to providing some automatic cancellation at some point in the future, but that right now is all on hold. So if you believe that you qualify for this, there's an application to fill out. You can also call your loan servicer and ask your loan servicer for an application. You submit that application to your servicer and your servicer will process that. We have more information about the closed school program here. Again, it's not going to apply to everyone. If you attended a school and graduated, got your degree, and it closed years later, you're not going to be eligible for closed school discharge. That actually happened to me. The college that I attended closed recently, 10 years or so after I graduated. I'm not eligible for loan forgiveness through the closed school discharge program. However, the students that did attend and were in attendance while the school was in the process of closing, those students would be eligible. So there's a big caveat there. And we're hearing a lot more about schools that are closing, the funding cliff that is coming with higher education. This might be something we see a lot more of in the future. So if you're currently in school, or if you're a parent borrower and your child's school closes, these are definitely things that you need to be aware of going forward. Borrower defense to repayment. So this is another program that's out there for specific borrowers who attended programs that maybe engaged in some bad behavior and some misconduct. So if your school lied to you, misled you, or failed to tell you really important information about the program to get you to enroll or to get you to stay in school, or they engaged in some other type of misconduct or illegal actions to get you to enroll or stay in school, you may actually be eligible to have your loans canceled through the Borrower Defense to Repayment Program. Now, this program is essentially states that if you took out federal loans and you were encouraged or misled to take out these loans, and the program didn't end up being what you thought it was, and it was actually really detrimental to you, you have a defense to repaying that student loan debt. So this is a program that is out there. It's very, very complicated to apply for, but this is something that a number of borrowers who have been in this situation have been able to benefit from. And sometimes the Department of Education will even automatically cancel loans for groups of students if they find that a particular school or program engaged in misconduct or harmed students in similar ways. This is called a group discharge, and we've heard about this in the news over the years. I think probably the biggest one people may be familiar with were the Corinthian colleges, right, that were engaging in really bad practices and behaviors to take advantage of students to get them to enroll. Those students are eligible in some cases for automatic group discharge cancellations. If you don't qualify for an automatic discharge, you do have to apply. And as I said, the application process can be difficult. You have to have evidence and proof to show that the school engaged in qualifying misconduct. We have information about the program, and it is something I would highly recommend if you think that you may benefit from this, if you think that you went to a school that engaged in this type of behavior. Definitely talk to an attorney or a student loan expert to walk through the ins and outs of how to apply for this. So right now, student loan debt forgiven through the Borrower Defense Program is not considered taxable income. But again, as with everything we've said today, talk to a tax advisor if you have specific questions about that. And as I said before, because these are very complicated cases, you will likely need an attorney to advise you before you proceed. There are a number of legal aid programs out there that work on borrower defense cases and have expertise in this. We have some information about how to find those resources at the end of these slides today, but always follow up with NCLC if you have particular questions about finding more help. False certification discharge. So this is another very rare, unique situation, but we have worked with a number of borrowers who have qualified for this. So essentially, if you didn't have a high school diploma or a GED when you enrolled in school, or you had some other type of disqualifying status, such as a criminal record or a medical condition that would prevent you from getting a job in the field you were actually studying for at the school, you may be eligible to have your loans canceled through the false certification discharge program. And through this program, essentially the government says, well, the school and the financial aid office that certified that you were eligible for loans, when you weren't, when you actually didn't meet the requirements to be eligible for this federal financial aid to go to this program, you are potentially eligible then to have all of that debt forgiven and canceled. There are different types of false certification applications depending on what your circumstances are. And we have a link here to the studentaid.gov website, which includes the 4 different applications depending on your circumstances, such as, disqualifying status or, lacked high school diploma or GED. All of that is available on studentaid.gov's website, as well as more information about how to determine if you are specifically eligible for that. So student loan debt that's forgiven through the false certification discharge program, again, is currently not considered taxable income for federal purposes, but be sure to talk to a tax advisor if you have questions about that. Just like with closed school discharge and borrower defense, these programs can be very complicated to apply for. In many cases, we work with borrowers who attended these programs, um, decades earlier. So getting evidence and proof of this information may be difficult. In many cases, the schools have long since shut down, which is why it's really helpful to talk to an attorney to advise you before you proceed with this type of application. And similar to false certification, there's also identity theft. So if someone took out loans in your name or used your identity in some way to take out loans that you didn't actually benefit from, federal student loans that you didn't benefit from, you may be eligible to have those loans discharged. Now, there's two ways to go about this. There's the false certification discharge that we just mentioned before. In this circumstance, a school employee uses your identity to take out loans improperly. Or there is the common law forgery discharge program where someone else not a part of the school uses your identity to take out loans. Unfortunately, we've run into borrowers who have student loans that they never took out, they never went to school, but it turned out a family member had taken out loans in their name. And that is an instance where you may be able to apply for a common law forgery discharge. So again, these can be complicated. These can be tough cases to go through. We've listed the applications here for both the false certification ID theft and the common law forgery discharge application. Again, this is not currently considered taxable income for federal purposes, but we'd advise you to talk to a tax advisor if you have questions about that, as well as an attorney if you really think that you meet the situation, because they can be tough to proceed with. Again, we'll have resources at the end of the slides if you need help finding an attorney. And I would always recommend that you try your local legal aid organization first, because legal aid organizations provide much of this help for free for folks who qualify and also have particular expertise in many cases in how to proceed with this type of student loan discharge. So we've covered kind of the big programs that are out there, but I want to spend the majority of our time really doing a deep dive on the specific total and permanent disability discharge program, because this is something, again, that I think a lot of borrowers who are in retirement, who are older, may qualify even if they are not on disability benefits. So we want to make sure people know about this. So if you are not able to work due to an ongoing disability, whether it's physical or mental, then you may actually be able to qualify to have all of your loans canceled through the TPD program, total and permanent disability discharge. Some borrowers actually can even get their loans automatically canceled through the TPD program if they receive specific type of disability benefits, such as Social Security disability benefits or veterans disability benefits. So this is something that is out there that I think people don't know about. Some people may have already gotten their loans automatically canceled through the Social Security disability or the VA disability program. But if you are not automatically eligible and you don't receive any disability benefits, you can still apply and may be eligible for a TPD discharge. Now, this is through a process where you actually have a medical professional, such as a doctor, fill out a very short questionnaire on the application process, certifying that you cannot work. And if the doctor does this and all of the steps are followed correctly, then your loans should be discharged. So we have information obviously on this on studentaid.gov's website. There also is just big news related to this, that currently this is not considered taxable income for the purposes of federal taxes. The tax relief on this program is set to expire at the end of this year, at the end of 2025, and may be considered taxable in the future. However, Congress is looking to extend the tax relief there. It hasn't been finalized, so we don't know. But if that is extended, then this will be considered not taxable for the purposes of federal taxes in the future. If Congress doesn't finalize that, and if the tax relief isn't extended, unfortunately, folks who do qualify for this after 2025 may have to deal with tax consequences there. And again, talk to a tax advisor if you have questions about that. So TPD is one of the easiest and quickest ways for many borrowers to get student loan debt relief. But there are some pitfalls to watch out for. There have also been big changes to the TPD program in recent months, changes to how the program is being managed and serviced that are currently impacting borrowers right now and making it a little bit chaotic and a little difficult for borrowers to deal with right now. But we are hoping that all of this will be ironed out going forward. And I want to dive into some specifics right now on how to apply and what to watch out for. So first, again, why are we focusing on TPD? A lot of folks are like, "Well, I'm not disabled. I don't qualify for this program. I don't get any type of disability benefits." But many borrowers, when they really think about it and they actually go over what the requirements are for TPD, they realize, you know what, I actually wouldn't be able to go back to work right now because of a physical condition. I might be able to work, a few hours a week, but I wouldn't be able to go back and work in any sort of substantial employment opportunity for long periods of time. And in those cases, if a doctor would certify that you meet that requirement, then you should be able to get your student loans discharged. It's one of the easiest and quickest ways for many people to qualify for federal student loan forgiveness. And many older borrowers who are in retirement, who wouldn't be able to go to work full time due to their physical or mental health condition, could qualify to have all of their loans forgiven in a very quick, turnaround time. Again, all they need to do is have a medical professional sign off on their condition. So if you have doctor's appointments coming up, this might be a good thing to talk to your doctor about to see if this is something you could potentially qualify for. So again, because of all of the changes that have happened with the TPD program over the past couple of months, we're hearing of some problems with the application process right now. The department recently changed the way the TPD program is managed and the system for processing those applications. The goal of these changes over the last few months was to actually make it easier for more borrowers to benefit from the TPD program in the future and to make it more automatic and less something that they have to go through and submit a bunch of paperwork for. But there have been some problems getting the new system in place. So everything I tell you today is with the caveat that this is how it should work. But currently, because this new process is only a few months old, currently we are hearing that it's not working that way for everyone. We are hoping that those, problems in the system will get worked out over time. And if you are struggling with any of this, I would say talk to either a legal aid attorney or a disability rights organization or even a veterans organization that may have folks to help walk you through this and help guide you through it and advocate for you to get relief if you qualify. So qualifying for TPD. So there are generally three ways to qualify for a total and permanent disability discharge. The medical professional certification. So this is the most common one that people actually use when they apply for TPD. So a medical professional has to confirm that you can't work due to a disability that has lasted or is expected to last at least 5 years or is expected to result in death. So this is something that a lot of folks, when they talk to their doctor and they really think about it, like, actually, that kind of does meet my situation, even though I don't qualify for disability benefits, I'm on retirement benefits, and I have pension income. I'd still qualify based on these specific regulations and could have my loans canceled through that. The other two ways to qualify are through veteran status or Social Security disability benefit status. So if you are a veteran with 100% service-connected disability, you should be eligible to have your loans canceled. Now, you can't apply for that based on that status. However, most veterans who meet this, if the Department of Education will do a data match with the VA and will match up people who have student loans with people who get service-connected disability benefits, and they will automatically identify those folks for cancellation. But if you haven't met that, there's steps you can do to apply for that. Same thing with Social Security disability benefits. If you get SSDI or SSI benefits, you may be eligible to have your loans canceled either automatically or by application if for whatever reason your application is not automatically determined to be eligible when the department does their data match with Social Security. So, for folks who get SSDI or SSI benefits, if their next medical review is in 5 to 7 years, or your 3-year review has been renewed, you should be able to qualify, or your disability started at least 5 years before you got benefits, and that's what we see in a lot of these cases. Or in some cases, if you're on the SSA Compassionate Allowance Program, or you were on SSDI or SSI benefits before switching to SSA retirement benefits. If any of that applies to you, then you should qualify for the TPD program if you have existing federal student loans. Now, again, just like with the VA program, the Department of Education does check in on a quarterly basis with the Social Security Administration to see who has outstanding student loan debt and who is receiving those specific types of Social Security disability benefits to automatically identify people who will be eligible. But if for whatever reason you get missed and you feel like you meet these requirements, you can apply based on that information as well. So as I stated, if you are automatically eligible for TPD, the way it works is the Department of Education pairs up data from the VA or from SSA 4 times a year to see who meets these requirements automatically. If you qualify, then the department will send you a letter letting you know that they think that you're eligible for a TPD discharge. The department will then automatically cancel your loans under the TPD program without you having to do anything, without you having to apply. However, if for whatever reason you do not want to receive a TPD discharge, if you're concerned about taxes or anything else, you can actually opt out. So once you get that letter, you can opt out. If you don't opt out, the department will then take steps to just automatically cancel your student loans and will notify you when those student loans have been discharged. You can also check and verify on your studentaid.gov account to see your balance. If you've received one of these letters in the past and you just want to double check and make sure, and you don't have your letter from the department anymore verifying that, then go on to studentaid.gov and check your account there. It should show that you have 0 loans. So again, if you qualify for TPD based on your VA or SSA status and you don't receive the automatic discharge, sometimes this happens. There's issues with the data matches frequently. You can still apply using the TPD application. If you don't have the paperwork showing and proving that you meet the requirements based on this status, you may still be able to apply using the medical professional certification. That's something that people find is just easier to get their doctor to fill out the form than it is to actually gather all the documents showing that they meet the requirements based on their Social Security status. But again, this is something that you can apply for if you have all of that paperwork. It's a pretty straightforward process to submit the application. So applying for TPD right now, because there have been changes in the process, you can actually fill out the form online. And you can also download the form and return a paper application. If you're applying based on your VA or SSA benefit status and you didn't automatically qualify and you need to submit an application, then again, you also need to include with the application proof of your eligibility. But if you're applying, which most people do it this way, if you're applying via the medical professional certification, you need to have a medical professional complete part of the application certifying that you meet all of the requirements. It's a very easy application to fill out, even for your doctor or other medical professional who completes this. It's only a few pages that actually need to be filled out. When you download the form, it's 19 pages long, but most of that is just instructions on, what the program is, where to send the forms, and it's really only a few pages that you need to fill out and a few pages that your medical professional needs to fill out. Right now, we're telling people that if you can, it is best to submit and prepare everything online through the online tool. And that is because with the new system, we are hearing that borrowers who submit all of the information online and fill everything out online, their applications are getting processed much faster. This is true for most things that happen in the federal student loan system. If you use the online tools, that's going to get processed much more quickly. There's going to be fewer rates of error there and fewer opportunities for the paperwork to get lost. if you can access it online, which we know that's a huge barrier for a number of folks, you can still fill out the paper application, but if we've heard from borrowers that those applications have gotten lost, that they've been returned because they're not, they're not readable. But where you can, I would say always submit things online first and foremost. So getting a doctor or other medical professional certification. So again, unless you have proof that you qualify based on your VA or SSA benefit status, you'll have to have a medical professional fill out that section of the application certifying that you meet the disability requirements. So there have been changes in who actually can fill out these forms. So right now, medical professionals that can fill out the form include doctors, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and licensed psychologists. So if you live in an area that may not have a doctor that works full time, and when you go to your doctor's office, you only see a nurse practitioner or a PA, a physician assistant, they can actually fill out and complete this form for you. So that's a big benefit. That's a big change that has happened in recent years and is making it a lot easier for many people to actually, get these forms filled out. Unlike other disability benefits programs, the forms and requirements are not as intense for medical professionals to complete. So it's very short. It's a very short description that they need to complete of your disability, just certifying that you meet the qualifications as laid out by the program. It's only 3 pages long, and it's just a few short questions about your condition. You don't need to attach any documentation about your disability if you are using a medical professional certification. So that's different from other programs like workers' compensation or Social Security disability benefits, where you have to submit a lot of proof and there's hearings and things like that to prove that you actually are, disabled and qualify for these benefits. The TPD program is just a very short form, few questions for your doctor or your NP or your PA or your psychologist to fill out and complete, certifying that you are unable to work due to your condition. So we actually have included the full application if you want to take a look at all the questions. Again, I would say use the online tool to fill this out and complete it. But if you just want to look at what the application looks like, or if you're going to fill it out by hand and want to download it, we've included the application there. And the questions actually begin on page 6 of the 19-page long document. I've also included a couple of images of what the form looks like. So section 6 is where the medical professional certification starts, and it's just very basic, simple questions. Again, everyone has to fill out all of the questions. So if you're working with your doctor or other medical professional to fill this out, make sure they fill out all of the questions, because if they skip one, that is, not something that they're allowed to skip, that might result in the application getting denied. So this is again, just another slide showing the rest of the form. It's only 3 pages for your medical professional to fill out, and it's pretty short, pretty simple. If you have a doctor's appointment coming up and you have federal student loans, definitely something to bring along and talk to them about. But you might also want to message your, your medical professionals and see if you can make a specific appointment to talk to them about this as well. So to apply online, this is what we're recommending everyone do. So you have to log into your account on studentaid.gov. Then you go to this specific page on TPD, studentaid.gov/TPD-discharge. Once you're on that page, that is the program page for the total and permanent disability discharge application. You can choose the option that fits your situation. So you're applying based on your VA or SSA benefit status, or you're applying based on a medical professional certification. So click whatever situation applies to you. If you are applying based on the medical professional certification, if you can provide your doctor or your medical professional's email address for an electronic signature, they will then get sent a link to electronically certify and sign the application. So I would recommend that you obviously notify your doctor before you're doing this, or your nurse practitioner. Talk to them, have the conversation with them about this. Some doctors communicate through, online portals and messaging systems and are fine to talk about this way, but you may need to also talk to them at your next medical appointment just to give them a heads up this is coming and that they understand it and that they have no issues with completing this for you. if you were able to do that, that is the best way. So once you fill out your own information on the TPD application online tool, you have to complete the e-signature and then hit submit, and your application will be submitted. If the medical professional is able to electronically certify and sign it, that will all be done there. But if not, you will have to upload the form that the doctor or medical professional has filled out. So for paper applications, you can, again, complete these online. This is something where you can use the TPD application tool online and then print the actual application. This, I think, would be a really great option if your doctor or medical professional won't provide you an email address to complete the form electronically. This is what we would recommend. You complete your section online, then download and print this and have your doctor fill it out by hand after the fact. So again, to apply using this method, log into your studentaid.gov account, go to the TPD page, choose the option that meets your situation, choose the manual signature option. And after completing the online application, you'll get a link to download the PDF version to sign and then submit. So you'll need to print your application and you'll need to have your medical professional sign off and complete the form after the fact. If you're also applying based on your VA or SSA benefit status, you will need to include proof of your eligibility with your application, and then you have to sign it and submit the application. So you can also download a blank TPD application, and we gave you the link to that previously. It's also here, and submit it manually. I will say, if you fill out a paper form, you can submit it by mail or fax, but this method will likely take a lot longer to process. And we've heard of people who have had issues when they have been submitting these paper applications, that they're getting lost, they're not getting processed, there's a hold on them. This is one we would say only do this method if you have no other option to complete it online. But it is out there and available to you. So again, you can download the application form on this link here, the studentaid.gov link. You fill out your portion of the application, have your medical professional fill it out, or if you're applying based on your VA or SSA benefit status, then submit proof of your eligibility along with the application. Just make sure you sign the application at the time that you submit it. So submitting these applications. So if you're submitting a paper application, either one that you filled out by hand or one that you've completed online and then download and printed and want to submit later, there's a couple different ways you can do it. So you can do it by mail, by fax, or online by uploading it to your account on studentaid.gov. So we've included the information of where to mail the form to, as well as where to fax the form to. But again, I would recommend, even if you have to fill this out by hand, even if you need to get your doctor to fill it out after you've completed the online portion yourself and you've printed it, try, if you're able, to get help uploading the document online. And you do that by logging into your studentaid.gov account and going to My Activity, or using the document upload tool. So once you click on those two things, you actually have the option to upload documents. So from your computer or whatever device you're working from, if you have a PDF version of your application and all your supporting materials, you can then actually upload it to your account right there and submit it right there. Once you do that, it will be saved and there will actually be a record of it so that you can go back and you can verify, yes, I uploaded it, I submitted it on this date, here's where it is. It is much more likely that your application will not get lost if you upload it through these methods by doing this online. We have heard borrowers say over and over again that they've had issues submitting these forms by mail or by fax. And that's just because the system is changing, who is managing these PO boxes and who's managing these fax numbers have been changing. And we don't want borrowers to get lost in this and to potentially have to go through the process again if they can avoid it. So where you can, upload your completed applications online. So what to do if your doctor or medical professional refuses to complete the form? This is a really tough question. We get asked this a lot. We have spoken with doctors and medical professionals who are uncomfortable completing these forms. A lot of times it's just because they're not familiar with the program and they don't want to sign off on anything that they don't understand. Or they incorrectly think that this program requires the same standard as other types of disability programs, such as SSDI or SSI. The standard for meeting the disability requirement for the TPD program is much lower than the threshold for Social Security disability benefits or SSI. And also the information that the doctors have to provide is much shorter and it's only a couple of pages of information. So, if you can, you really should be your own advocate. Try to explain the program to your medical professional you're working with. There's instructions in the application for medical professionals about what counts, what doesn't. Talk to them about your situation and why, going back to work in, full time or any kind of substantial way would not be possible for you. And really explain how this debt is also impacting you, and potentially even impacting your health situation. In a lot of those cases, we have seen that medical professionals actually, once they really understand what the program is about, they are like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. I will complete that. I'll sign off on that. But you may have to, sort of be your own advocate and educate your medical professional about this program. Feel free to send them this webinar. Feel free to send them other resources from studentaid.gov or from studentloanborrowerassistance.org to help sort of advocate for yourself here. I will also say that we have come across some medical professionals that have personal reasons for refusing to sign these forms. They don't necessarily think forgiveness in this situation is something they agree with, and they refuse to sign the form in that regard. That's really tough and not necessarily something that we have a lot of good advice for navigating. But what I will say is that you can seek out other medical professionals or practices that may be more helpful to you. Again, it doesn't have to be a doctor that signs the form. It could be a nurse practitioner, it could be a PA, or even a licensed psychologist. So seeking out another practitioner that you might be working with, or a new practitioner that might be more open to this, is another step that you could take. Another option would be to ask your local legal aid, a disability rights organization, a veterans organization, or even an aging organization for help. These are orgs that often are very familiar with these programs, that also in many cases have good connections with the medical community and can help advocate for you, and maybe even help direct you to practitioners that are familiar with this program and would meet with you to talk to you about it. As I said, you don't necessarily have to have a doctor to sign off the form. So if you have other practitioners that you work with or you're aware of that are familiar with this program that would certify that you meet the qualifications, you can have them sign the form as well. So what happens after you apply? So after you submit your application is then reviewed and processed by a contractor that works for the Department of Education. This again is a new process. This is how it's supposed to work. It's not necessarily working for everyone this way right now. So if you encounter any problems in this process, please let NCLC know, or please reach out and connect with an attorney or legal aid org that might be able to help you as you're navigating some of the challenges here. You shouldn't have to make payments on your loans while your discharge application is being reviewed. But what we're telling people is that this type of forbearance that's supposed to automatically get applied to your account doesn't always happen. And we would suggest that you call your loan servicer to let them know that you're applying for TPD and to ask for that TPD discharge forbearance to be applied to your account while you're waiting for a decision on your application. And if you're still getting bills, you really should follow up with your loan servicer and let them know that you've submitted your application and you shouldn't be making payments right now. We are hearing that this has been a problem for a number of borrowers and that people have had trouble, getting these forbearances applied. We're also hearing that it's taking a lot longer to process TPD applications due to all the changes. There was actually a pause on processing TPD applications while some of these changes were being implemented. And because of that, there's now a huge backlog of applications that the contractors have to work through and manage and process. So there may be delays in hearing back about your application. Hopefully what we're we're really looking forward to the point in time where this sort of evens itself out. And in the future, we're hoping that this actually be a much smoother process for borrowers and that these new changes will be good in the long run. But it's a little bit chaotic right now as the changes are being implemented and people are getting used to the new system. One thing I want to note is that Nelnet is no longer the loan servicer in charge of processing TPD applications. So Nelnet for the longest time actually was the only servicer that managed TPD applications. They used to run a website, disability discharge, where you'd actually get all the information. That is no longer available. Nelnet is no longer the loan servicer in charge of this. It's now been moved to contractors that work directly with the Department of Education. So if you previously submitted an application to Nelnet before these changes took place, so let's say you applied in November of last year and you're still waiting for a decision, we've heard from folks that those applications have been lost and that they may need to reapply and may need to actually go back and have a medical professional sign the form again. That is a huge headache and a huge hassle, particularly for borrowers who live in areas where they may not have access to their doctors all the time, and it is a problem to just make these medical appointments. So what we would say is if you're in that situation, call the TPD hotline, call your loan servicer first, check on the status, see what is going on. And if you still need additional help, it may benefit you to talk to a legal aid or another attorney or counselor who works on student loan issues to see if you need to reapply. So the TPD hotline, this is a phone number that you can actually contact that the Department of Education manages. It's a call center. It's a 1-800 number. So this is just for TPD. If you have questions about a TPD application you've already submitted, or if you have questions about submitting an application, you can call this number. You can also call your loan servicer, but you can call this number. We just want to say that we've heard that they have really long wait times right now. So call at different times of the day, see if you can get someone. If you do call us, be prepared to wait a long time, and also make sure to take really good notes. Ask who you're speaking with, ask for if they have a representative ID number. Take really good notes of your phone call so you can document that if you have problems down the line and you need to confirm with your loan servicer or someone else in the government what you were previously told. So here are some problems that we often see with TPD applications. Now, for the most part, TPD is fairly straightforward to apply for. If you complete the form, if you have a medical professional complete the form and certify everything, and everything is done correctly, it's a pretty straightforward process in normal times, where folks usually in a few months will get notification that their application has been approved and that their loans will be discharged. But we have seen problems come up with applications, and I want to make sure people are aware of what those problems are. And obviously, right now, as the changes are happening, we know that borrowers are having to wait a really, really long time in some cases to get their applications processed. So one of the first big problems we see is that the applications they submit are incomplete. So you and your medical professional, if you're applying with a medical professional certification, you must answer all the questions. Even if you have to respond to some questions as not applicable. And that's fine, but you need to make sure that all of the questions are answered and responded to. In addition, if you are applying with a medical professional certification, you should tell your medical professional that abbreviations and insurance codes and other things like that should not be used when describing your disability or your limitations. Doctors love shorthand, and I get it. That makes sense for them. They're dealing with a lot of things on a daily basis, but for this program, they really need to be very clear about what the conditions are. So when they're responding to those questions, make sure you let them know, like, don't use shorthand. If you've seen what they filled out and you don't understand it, it's likely that the loan servicer and the contractors processing these applications won't either. Other problems we've seen is that incorrect signatures. Some of this might be changing with the online form, but just so you know, typed cursive signatures or digital certificate-based signatures are generally not accepted, with the exception of the online tool. So if you submit it using the online tool inside there, electronically certified there, The same with the doctor. If the doctor electronically certifies it through the online tool, that will be accepted. But otherwise, if they use like a PDF program or something to do a typed signature, that will not be accepted. Other problems we've seen is that applications are just not legible. It's a cliche that doctors have bad handwriting. It's not true in every case, but these forms need to be really, really clear. If you're filling it out online and your doctor's completing it online, your medical professional's completing it online, that shouldn't be an issue because it's all going to be typed up. But if you're filling it out by hand or you have a medical professional fill it out by hand, make sure it is legible, make sure it's very clear, make sure when you're scanning the document in, if you're uploading it after the fact, make sure that the scan quality is readable and it is very good, and you can review it so that the contractors processing it can review it too. If you're applying based on VA or SSA benefit status, you make sure you include required proof and documentation. If you don't include that, but you just check all the boxes that you meet it, it's not something that the department will necessarily be able to verify unless they've automatically already identified you. So make sure you submit the required documentation there. Some other things that we've seen too more recently, given the processing changes, is that applications that were previously submitted have been lost during the transition to the new system, or that medical professional certifications have expired before the application was submitted. So you only have 90 days after your medical professional signs off on everything to actually submit the application. So don't wait on this. And we have heard that there's been some problems with the system right now where folks have submitted it in time, but they're being told still that the certification had expired, and that's because the processing contractors are saying that, oh well, we didn't get to it till 6 months later, and the certification expired. Well, no, but the date that I submitted it, it was in good standing, so it should be in good standing there. That's still a problem that you may encounter. Again, we're hoping that some of these issues get smoothed out, but make sure if you are submitting it based on a medical professional certification that you do submit it, you send it by mail, fax, or hopefully uploading it online within the time requirement. So if you were denied, can you apply again? So yes, if you were denied one time because of either errors in the application or because you didn't meet the requirements at the time, but now you think you do, you can reapply. This is something that there's no sort of limit on how often you can apply for this. Just make sure you understand why you were denied so you can fix any mistakes or technical errors, or you can get more evidence of your disability. If your application was denied due to a minor technical issue, you can also call your servicer, the TPD hotline, and ask them if you can correct the problem without having to reapply. I haven't heard too many people who've had success with this, but some people have. And those folks usually have an attorney or legal aid or helping them with that process to correct whatever the error is. You can also ask, if you don't want to reapply right away, you can also ask the department to reevaluate your discharge application if it was denied, and you provide new information that supports your eligibility for your discharge within 12 months of getting the denial. So, if you get a denial, pretty recently, you can ask them to reevaluate it if you have new information now or new evidence to support it. But after 12 months has passed from that initial denial, you have to submit a new application. You have to go through the process again. Again, we recommend if you were denied and you want to get more help, contact your local legal aid organization, disability rights organization, veterans, or even an aging organization, as they may be able to assist you with this. We have more information on our website, which I've listed here, that includes tips for how to find help with your student loans. Again, if you can get free help to assist you in applying for this program from a trusted organization that has expertise in this, that would be a great tool to utilize. And I just want to let folks know that there is a sort of post-discharge monitoring period for the TPD program. Now, this really only applies to folks if they are thinking about going back to school. So if you got a TPD discharge based on your SSA status or your medical professional certification, you'll be monitored for 3 years after you receive the discharge. And so what that means is essentially, if you try to go to school again and you want to take out new federal student loans in that 3-year period, your debt that was discharged will actually be reinstated. So think carefully about applying for the TPD program if you are also considering going back to school, because your debt could be reinstated. And you actually have to take steps to get federal loans in order, after you've already received a discharge, in order to take those out. So just be careful about that. This doesn't apply to everyone, but we have seen some situations where folks have, felt like, oh, I'm doing better. I'd like to go back to school. I'd like to transition and try to find something in my field of interest that would also make it so I could work depending on my disability. Just know that that might have consequences on your debt that was previously discharged under this program. Okay, so that covers the federal student loan cancellation and discharge programs. I know there's questions in the chat. We're going to try to go over those, but I very briefly just want to touch upon a couple of last things. So, what if you don't qualify for forgiveness? And what if you have private student loan debt that doesn't qualify for these programs? So these are questions that we get asked all the time. Are you out of luck if you don't qualify for federal student loan forgiveness? Not necessarily. You may have other options for managing your student loan payments. So you could look into affordable repayment options such as the income-driven repayment program. You could consider, if you don't qualify for an IDR plan that would lower your payment enough based on your income. If you still can't afford it, you could consider asking for a forbearance or a deferment to temporarily pause your payment. And as a last resort, if you still can't manage your debt, you can talk to an attorney to see if filing for bankruptcy to try to discharge your student loan debt that way is right for you. A lot of people assume that student loans are not dischargeable in bankruptcy. That is actually not true. They are dischargeable in bankruptcy, but it's a much harder process to go through than other types of debt. And so you really need an attorney that can advise you on that process if you are looking to get rid of your debt that way, as it is a last resort option and has other negative consequences too. And then for private student loans, unfortunately, private student loans aren't eligible for any of the types of programs that we talked about today. Those are only for federal student loans. But in some cases, private lenders do offer some limited cancellation forgiveness programs. And if they promised you those types of programs when you took out your loan, if that's in your contract or any of the loan terms, they have to abide by those promises. In some cases, we see that some private lenders will allow a borrower to cancel their loans if they are disabled. So they might have a similar program to the TPD program. If you're disabled and unable to work, you may be able to get your private loans discharged there. Same thing if the primary borrower dies. There may be some types of limited death discharges if you're a cosigner and the primary borrower has passed away. Also, if you have private student loans, the lender in some cases may be willing to work with you to settle your debt for less than what you actually owe. So, although that's not a forgiveness of the full debt, they may, make compromises with you depending on your situation. So, ask your private lender about cancellation programs. And again, just be aware that unlike the federal loan programs, for private student loans, there actually are statute of limitations to collect on those debts. And that will depend on the state you live in, the state where you took out the loan. So you really need to get an advice from an attorney on this. But if you haven't paid on a private student loan in a number of years, and they haven't sued you or taken any steps to collect on that, before you make a payment, before you make a settlement, talk to an attorney, because the debt may be too old for them to collect. But if you make a new payment, it may sort of restart that statute of limitations, and you may be stuck with that debt now for a longer period of time. And similarly to federal student loans, you can also try to discharge private student loan debt in bankruptcy. But again, you need an attorney to advise you on this process to see whether or not it's right for you, because bankruptcy does have a lot of negative consequences too. So what about private loans that were written off, charged off? Are those forgiven? No. So a write-off or a charge-off of an account by a lender or creditor does not necessarily mean the debt was forgiven. The creditor or lender may still try to file a lawsuit against you to collect on the debt, or may sell the debt to debt collectors. But again, if it's been a while since you last paid on a private student loan debt, the statute of limitations may have expired. It's different depending on the state. So you really need to talk to an attorney in your area to get advice about dealing with these types of debts. So lastly, I just want to flag that there are a lot of scams going on right now, particularly related to student loan forgiveness. Every time I'm in my car and I turn on the radio, I feel like I hear student loan debt relief advertisements saying, we'll help you get out of debt, we'll get your loans forgiven. Scammers are real, and they are taking advantage of all the confusion and chaos in the student loan system. I would say be very wary of any company that's promising student loan forgiveness, cancellation, or relief, particularly for a fee or in exchange for your information, and report these scams to your state AG's office, your Attorney General. You can also report them to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the FTC, and share your stories with NCLC. We want to hear what's going on, what's out there, so that we can stay on top of it and we can warn borrowers and advise borrowers about what to look out for. So you never have to pay to apply for federal student loan cancellation or discharge programs. There's no fee to apply for any of the programs that we discussed today. So if you're talking to a company that says, well, we can get you this cancellation, but the fee is this, I would just be very cautious about doing that, because you shouldn't have to pay for this. There are a lot of really trusted organizations that provide free assistance to help you apply for these programs, such as legal aid organizations and nonprofit financial counseling organizations. Really look to those trusted organizations in your community, and be aware of any company that's promising this type of forgiveness. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So we've included some resources here, including our toolkit. We've shown this to folks before on previous webinars, but this has fillable pages and guides where you can screen yourself for certain programs, including cancellation and loan forgiveness. So we actually have checklists available where you can see if you potentially qualify for any of these types of cancellation and discharge programs, as well as information about how to apply and where to get more information about the next steps for applying for these programs. So if you want to download that and go through those questions, it's a really quick and easy way to screen yourself for potential eligibility. Again, we also have our website, as we mentioned before, studentloanborrowerassistance.org. It's getting revamped, and we are updating it with all the new information about these programs, including changes to the TPD system. So I will say those changes are coming in the coming weeks. So stay tuned and watch out for that. And we also post news updates about what's going on and what's being finalized at the federal student loan level, and what's happening in Congress. Finally, I just want to mention we have a book called Surviving Debt that's free to download if you want more advice about getting out of student loan debt and other debt as well. This is a great resource that we provide that you can download for free on our digital library. Okay, to sum up, student loan debt cancellation, forgiveness, and discharge programs are still available and still out there and can help many borrowers relieve their student loan debt. Use our toolkit to answer questions to see if you're potentially eligible for some of these programs. And know that if you're unable to work in any kind of substantial way due to a physical or mental condition, you may be able to have your loans discharged through the TPD program, even if you don't receive or qualify for disability benefits. If you get stuck, reach out to a trusted organization such as a local legal aid, disability rights, a veterans or an aging organization. Nonprofit financial counseling organizations can also be helpful here too. And watch out for student loan scammers promising loan forgiveness in exchange for payments. That's really the big deal. So I want to go over questions that folks may have. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We've got about 7 minutes left. So I'm going to look to the Q&A here, and any questions that we don't get to today, we will try also to answer offline and send those answers with written responses along with the slides and the materials from today's program. Okay, so question from one person: if my IBR, my income-based repayment payment amount is $0, does this earn credit toward qualifying repayment? This is a great question, and the answer is yes. So if you are on a qualifying IDR payment, even if your payment is $0 per month, which a lot of borrowers are in that situation, that does count towards your income-driven repayment cancellation time, it also counts towards public service loan forgiveness. So even if you are paying nothing, but you're in a qualifying repayment, you still could be earning credit towards loan cancellation, which is one of the big reasons why we recommend people look at these IDR plans, because you could be paying nothing towards your federal student loans and be earning time and banking time towards loan forgiveness. So that is a really big benefit, and we want to make sure that people are looking out for that. Again, changes may be coming to the IDR program in the coming weeks. There's also some court challenges happening right now that are affecting the income-driven repayment program and affecting enrollment and how people sign up for these programs. We know that there's a huge backlog of applications for new borrowers trying to get into these programs. So we will update folks at the August webinar about this, and we'll actually be going over the income-driven repayment program, the ins and outs of this, in a future webinar as well, so we can walk you through all this. But one of the biggest benefits of that program is that you will bank credit towards loan forgiveness. So definitely take advantage of that if you qualify. Okay. All right, I was on IBR and switched to the SAVE program. I had 25 years of 25 years towards forgiveness. Should I wait or apply for a TPD discharge? So right now, people who are enrolled in the SAVE program are not banking forgiveness towards loan cancellation, and that is because of the court challenges. So folks can switch back to the IBR program. Right now, the IBR program is the only program where people are continuing to receive loan cancellation. So I would say if you're really close, that might be something to consider. However, if you also qualify for TPD, you can apply for the TPD discharge as well. Now you can do both things simultaneously, but just be aware that when you apply for the TPD program, you should be put on a forbearance so you don't have to make payments. Those forbearance time may not count towards loan cancellation or forgiveness. So I would say, it's going to be dependent on your individual situation, but those are two options that are available. Trying to switch back to IBR, which may take a long time because of processing delays, or trying to apply for TPD, which again, may take a little bit longer because of processing delays. Okay, another question. What if you're able to find employment after you receive your TPD discharge? So if you go back to work after your loans have been discharged under the TPD program, currently that is not an issue. So some folks, they recover, right? They have conditions that met the eligibility requirements for TPD at the time they applied and received the discharge, but they recovered, they got better. I've talked to a lot of cancer patients in particular who we're expecting a terminal diagnosis, and we're expecting and planning for that, and had their loans discharged, but recovered, thankfully got better, and were able to go back to work. That will not reinstate the loans. There used to be this 3-year monitoring period where you would also have to report your income, and your loans could potentially be reinstated in that regard. But right now, that is not in effect. That is not something that is taking place, and your loans will only get reinstated if you meet certain conditions and you are trying to take out new federal student loans. So if you go back to work, if you're able to, that shouldn't be an issue. Okay. So one person said that they were told when they filed for bankruptcy that their student loans were not eligible for discharge. And this is actually something that we hear a lot. So the bankruptcy discharge process has changed in recent years. And so it is much easier now to get a discharge of your student loan debt, both federal and private student loans, through the bankruptcy process. But you have to go through specific steps, and you have to have, in many cases, you have to have an attorney who's knowledgeable of this to help you with it. It's not something that is automatic, unlike other types of debt that can be discharged in bankruptcy. So in those cases, I would say talk to a bankruptcy attorney, but look at your other options for potentially discharging student loans in the federal student loan discharge programs, such as public service loan forgiveness, TPD, IDR cancellation. There may be other ways that you can cancel or discharge your student loan debts outside of the bankruptcy process. Bankruptcy is considered a last resort option for people. So I would say that's not the first thing that you should go to if you're only looking to deal with your student loan debt. Look at your other options for dealing with that first, and then talk to a bankruptcy attorney who specializes or has knowledge of student loan discharges if you need help with that. We have information on finding those attorneys on our website, studentloanborrowerassistance.org. So definitely look to that. And then someone asked, would your award letter serve as proof for TPD based on SSDI? So this is a great question. Your award letter by itself may not qualify enough to show the Department of Education that you're eligible for TPD. The award letter has to have specific information in it showing that you meet all the requirements. That is listed out in the instructions on the studentaid.gov website, and I would say definitely look to that. If you have specific questions about it, talk to an attorney who specializes in this, or talk to a disability advocate who specializes in this. Those requirements are all available on the studentaid.gov website as well. But if you can't get the documentation, if you are receiving Social Security disability benefits, you may be able to have a medical professional that you work with who would be willing to sign off on that as well and say, oh yeah, you qualify based on the medical professional certification. So many people, even those who receive SSDI or SSI benefits, will still go through the medical professional certification process because they find that will be easier. Last question, and then we'll let everyone go, is, are Parent Plus loans eligible for TPD? So we covered this last month in our Parent Plus loan webinar, but yes, if you are the parent borrower and you qualify for a total and permanent disability discharge, you could potentially be eligible to have your loans discharged. So if you can no longer work, if you meet the requirements, you can get your Parent Plus loans discharged under that way. So with that, I think we answered a majority of the questions. I will go through and see if we have outstanding ones, but I just want to thank everyone here. We will send out this information after the fact. Hannah, can you just provide quick information about how folks will receive this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone. We are going to be sending you the webinar recording and kind of Q&A kind of following this by your email. I also put a link here in the chat to kind of where you can view our future webinars. We also have the webinar recordings there as well. So keep an eye on your inbox. That will be coming probably in about a week, week and a half. And then, yeah, our next webinar, like we mentioned, will be focused on a deep dive on student loan default, and that will be in August.
We will see you in August, and then in October, we'll see you again to talk about income-driven repayment. So thank you so much, everyone. This was really great. We will try to follow up with the remaining questions as well, and see you in August.
Thanks, everyone.